Hello, I'm Scott Graves, and today I'm going to convince you, without a doubt, why the moon landing couldn't have been faked. I have heard many people in my life that I thought were very rational who claim that the moon landing itself was fake. This is just not something that I can believe. To get some background on the moon landing, you must first understand the space race. After the end of World War II, the Soviets and the Americans did not like each other very much, and they went into the Cold War arms race. However, alongside the arms race, there was the space race, which roughly lasted from 1955 to 1975, a rough 20 years. The goal of the space race, the finish line, was to put a man on the moon. Now, why do people think that the moon landing was fake? Many people said that the U.S. just wanted to win the space race against the Soviets, get a one-up on them. Other people claim that the technology wasn't advanced enough at the time to do so. And a lot of people fall back and claim that the photos and videos taken on the moon were actually faked. To start off with, the photos of the moon and the videos would be impossible to recreate. Now, to start off with, we'll talk about the brightness and the long parallel shadows. This happens because the light source itself is the sun, which is roughly 93 million miles away from the moon. This causes the long parallel shadows on the ground. To get these shadows recreated in a studio, you couldn't do it with simple studio lights. The shadows would diverge. The only way you would be able to make those same style of shadows was with a wall of so many laser lights stuck together that they would look like pixels on a TV screen. You would need millions of these laser lights, which were not very easy to come by, especially because of the fact that the commercially available laser lights were all red. This means that if they would have tried to recreate it, it would have looked like a bad imitation of Mars, give or take. So many people fall back on the fact that the moon landing photos would have had to been digitally recreated. And yeah, while today we have the technology to have digitally recreated the moon landing photos, in 1969 they had none of that. They didn't have advanced computer graphics like we have today because those were roughly 40 years away from being made. They didn't get made almost into the mid-2000s. So, if these moon landing photos were faked, let's say in a scenario that they were, how many people would have had to keep quiet about this secret? To start off with, you would have over 400,000 NASA employees at the time, which, I've tried to keep a secret quite a few times between 5 people, and that's not easy. There were independent scientists from Australia, Spain, and England who all said that they caught the broadcast coming from space. And most importantly, our rivals in the space race, the Soviets, it's been 50 years since we landed on the moon, and never once did they claim that we faked it, which, they'd be the first people to claim that. So a lot of people would fall back on, well, there's no tangible proof that we landed on the moon. Actually, there is. When the astronauts went up to the moon, they left a set of retroreflectors in certain positions around their landing point. What retroreflectors are what scientists use to measure the distance from the Earth to the moon and at different points during its rotation and revolution around the Earth. They shine a laser at these retroreflectors, and the laser reflects back to them. Not only that, but if you go and look through a high-powered telescope, you can actually see the American flag that was planted on the surface of the moon. If you zoomed in far enough, though, it wouldn't be red, white, and blue anymore because the sun would have bleached the flag to be completely white, as there's no atmosphere on the moon. So, For the moon landing to have been faked, they would have had to develop computer graphics 40 years ahead of time. They would have had to convince multiple governments to lie on the U.S.'s behalf and contain those secrets for 50 years, and also somehow get retroreflectors and a flag onto the moon without actually going there. At that point, it'd just be easier to put a man on the moon. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope I convinced you that the moon landing was indeed real.